What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Bronx Pinstripes Show, brought to you today by Game Time, which is the easiest way to buy tickets to sporting events, concerts, comedy shows, theater, or whatever the heck you want to go to. For only 2 more weeks, this week and next, you can get $20 off your first purchase by downloading the Game Time app and using our promo code Bronx. This is going to be a little bit shorter of an episode. We've got a delayed morning, a cluster F of a night for Scott last night, cluster F of a morning for me this morning. And you've got other stuff to do today. So hi, Scott.
What's up? How we doing? Get some oh my God, what a morning. My smoke detectors are going off at 3 a.m. and then go off every 30 minutes, trying to find out no fire, no smoke, just, a malfunctioning thing. And they're all connected, right? Which is a good thing, but not when there's one malfunctioning. It's really hard to find out what's going on.
It's so funny because this happened to me, not the exact scenario, but my smoke detectors in my house last week, one time went off randomly. It was like 9:30 at night, so we hadn't gone to bed yet, but the kids were asleep.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. You get so angry at your smoke detector for going off.
Right.
And you're like, what? Shut up. And you're like, but this will save my life if there's a real fire.
Yeah, and it's not funny, but the ironic thing, it's not even ironic. I don't even know. I'm delirious. So, but yeah, as soon as it goes off, I've never jumped out of bed and sprinted into Kemp's room like as fast as human. It was like the flash. It was like one of those moments that you get superhuman speed and strength. But luckily, nothing wrong. Just something malfunctioning multiple times in the night. But yeah, man. And I stayed up late because I wanted to watch the end of Game 7 last night. So that was not a great combination, but pretty exciting baseball. Honestly, like I've not usually watching postseason all that much, but I've been pretty into this one. I wanted to see the Astros lose. I needed to see the Astros lose, and thank God that happened.
Really still? Because like they won.
It does.
Last
It makes
year,
me happy.
so like,
it makes me happy.
Once they won again, they've 7 straight ALCSs. I know they didn't repeat as champs, so that leaves still the Yankees from the 98 to 2000 run as the last baseball team to repeat as champion, which is kind of crazy to think about, like that it's been that long. Like there's been great teams. Like the Astros are the closest thing to the 90s Yankees dynasty that baseball has seen since then. 7 straight Final Fours.
They're closer to the Atlanta Braves of the 90s than they are the Yankees. So let's back up a minute. Because the Braves...
The Braves only won 1 championship.
Sounds familiar.
No, I mean the Astros
the first
have won
one
2
didn't
championship.
Count. That didn't count.
Okay. Well, they've got 2 titles. So I think they're probably closer to the Yankees than they are the Braves, although both are good comps.
I refuse to acknowledge the first championship, so that's why I'm going to the Braves.
We've got a couple things to talk about. We figured it'd be good to start with the playoffs because, yeah, like you said, both championship series were highly competitive down to the wire.
Yeah.
And we wanted to look at the rosters of these teams just to compare, like, how are these teams doing things versus how the Yankees are doing things? Because I don't know that anyone would have, if there's somebody out there who preseason somehow got in on the Diamondbacks Rangers World Series odds. Good for you. You're probably cleaning up right now.
Yeah.
But those are 2 teams that nobody thought were going to be in the World Series this year. The Rangers did a lot in the offseason, the last 2 off seasons, but still, after they spent all that money prior to the 2022 season, they didn't have a good year. People thought they'd be competitive because you add that much talent to a roster. Like, you're not going to suck. But I don't know that anyone was beating the drum for Rangers World Series.
No, but we had them a lot more competitive in the division because of, their biggest problem that they've had over the years. They've had hitting in prior years, but they've never had pitching, and they went, buck on the pitching side. And I thought it was they were in huge trouble, and they were when DeGrom went down. DeGrom was a big risk for them. He went down obviously, but they kept loading. They kept loading up. Obviously the Jordan Montgomery, they got Scherzer. So they certainly went for it. And it's interesting to watch who's constructing that team as well, and who's also running that team on the field. You got, in the ALCS, Bruce Bochy and Dusty Baker, 2 old school managers, former NL guys, have had a lot of success. Both have won championships. And you see on the Rangers side, who's constructing that team? our old friend Chris Young, who I think has played for every single major league franchise potentially, and seemingly was pitching up until like last year. I feel like the guy was pitching into deep into his 40s, but you see in the booth or in the box, you got Chris Young up there next to Michael Young. Michael Young was one of my favorite non-Yankees growing up because the guy just seemingly did everything. And he was just an all around really good player. He would spray the ball. He had a good glove. He was just a really good player on some mediocre teams. And these guys are constructing that team. And I'm sure they're using analytics quite a bit. I'm sure they're looking at statistics and understanding how to complement players. But these guys are also using their eyeballs, and they're looking at intangibles, which is something that we've complained about quite a bit with the makeup of this roster. Intangibles. How do you get? And I heard this. When we're looking at these teams, we'll look at the last four standing, but Dombrowski's known for going out there and being a free agent hero and just constructing teams on the back of the wallets of an owner. But he does a good job doing it. He sells off assets that are young and brings in players that can compete and that are seemingly complementary. And one of the big attributes that he's looking for is, how do you bounce back? What is your approach and attitude like when you're in a down slope, when you're in a down stretch? How do you bounce back from that? How is the resiliency of the player itself? How do you handle adversity? And these are qualities that I want in any athlete on any team that I root for. But the Yankees have had a real problem with that exact thing. And when you look at the makeup of some of these teams, I just think they're interesting, and certainly worth a conversation.
It's also, you've got to be careful not to look at the current winners and be like, well, that's the new way to do it, because that might not be sustainable. If you remember when the Royals won the World Series, coming out of that, it was, you got to build a monster bullpen, because that's how the Royals did it. So that's the future of baseball, is you got to have 3, maybe 4 elite guys in the bullpen, and then you can win in October. And you saw the Yankees try and emulate that, because immediately after the Royals won, they built a bullpen of Chapman, Miller, Betances.
BMC.
And listen, like that was a great bullpen, but the Yankees didn't win anything with that bullpen. So I'm just saying, we can look at the Diamondbacks roster and we can look at the Rangers roster, but that doesn't mean those teams unlocked something. They unlocked something for this year. I think the Rangers, what they've done, they've built a competitive team primarily through free agency and trades. They've got some homegrown guys, and you need homegrown guys on your roster. You can't only build through free agency. It's happened occasionally throughout baseball, but that always falls apart
it's short-lived. It's not a sustainable. It's usually not sustainable because you just can't afford to have that. You need to fill in pieces with young guys and role players.
Not only afford it, but the nature of building through free agency is you're getting guys in their prime towards the back end of their prime. So it's not going to be a 5+ year run with 30-year-olds that you sign in free agency. You're going to get a couple years before those guys start to decline. The real dream is, and this is what we thought the Yankees were coming out of the 2017 season. The dream is you have a nucleus of players that you've built through your system, that you have maybe not even in their prime yet, entering their prime, that you're going to have for a 6, 7, 8, 9 year stretch. And you supplement with free agents to take you over the top. That is the dream for any organization, how you build something sustainable.
2018.
I don't know.
2017, 2018.
That's what I'm saying. Coming out of the 17 Yankees, that's what we thought they were going to be. They had 4 or 5 guys you could point to that said, these are cornerstone franchise guys. Let's supplement with free agents over the next couple of years. It didn't happen. And I don't know that either the Diamondbacks or the Rangers have done it that way. What the Rangers did is they really primarily built through free agency. Like if you look at their roster, Simeon Seager, Evaldi Heaney, like all of these guys are free agent signings. And then the trades you mentioned, I mean, we didn't even mention DeGrom, who's not there, but the trades that you mentioned for Monty and Scherzer, like the supplement with a couple of the homegrown guys. Josh Young had a great, a good season at third base, but like I wouldn't look at that roster. If you look at the Rangers roster for 2023, for the regular season, their top 5 guys for WAR are all free agent signings.
Yeah, but okay, you have to add the right free agents, right? We all agree with that. Because
Well,
you go
yeah.
out and add pieces that are not
Carlos
uh,
Rodon.
Carlos Rodon, Giancarlo Stanton, you need to make sure that they're complementary pieces as well. And also talent evaluation, not only in the minor leagues with development, but identifying talent at a low level is so very, very, very important. You can have all the metrics and analytics you want in the world, but those analytics don't take shape until a player has, a good amount of sample size. But identifying raw talent, identifying tools at a very early stage, whether it's through the international draft, whether it's in the draft out of college, or in looking at the lower levels of minor leagues and making trades. Because you look through some of the Rangers players too, and like Jonah Heim is a guy that I thought was a homegrown guy. He's been there for a bit. He's a young guy, but he's not something, he's not a guy that people thought was going to be a major contributor. The Rangers saw something there. They're looking for particular qualities. They're looking for particular attributes in players. And yes, a lot of that's on the field, but some of it's off the field. Some of it's in the way that you handle certain things. But you go to the Diamondbacks team, and a man off the street, a person off the street can't name, like, frankly, one player on this team. Like, they don't have a superstar.
It's crazy. And
they don't have a superstar. I mean, Corbin Carroll is a superstar. He's slowly or quickly becoming my favorite player in baseball because he's freaking awesome and he's fun to watch and his demeanor is just like perfect. But this team was constructed based on talent, based on identifying young talent and making sure that you have, complementary pieces and bringing in guys like Evan Longoria, who is at the very tail end of his career. He's a shell of what he used to be. But he's like a Matt Holliday type, where you coming in, veteran leadership, a guy that has won before, someone who can ground the younger players. And you then look around. Joe Mantiply, which is a guy that the Yankees he had a cup of coffee with the Yankees. Tommy Pham, a guy that they traded for, who's got some fire and a little bit, he's got a role on that team. Gurriel is another guy, been around the league a bit, but has also been discarded a few times. They see something in these players and they're able to construct a bullpen that was dynamic. And again, you can't name 3 players on this team, let alone anybody in their bullpen off the street, and they are dynamic and very good. And I understand their regular season wasn't a snapshot of perfection.
This is
a team getting very hot.
Yeah, and this is where, as a Yankees fan, if the Yankees front office is looking at the Diamondbacks and saying that's what we want to be, that's scary.
They can't do that. They don't have the ability to do that because
no one has
payroll is $60 million.
No one has the ability to do that because it is lightning in a bottle.
They're closer to the Rays than they are anybody else.
The Diamondbacks won 84 games this year. They played the Yankees in mid-September or whatever that was, where the Diamondbacks were fighting for their playoff lives, and the Yankees took 2 out of 3 from them. Didn't they take 2 out of 3? And one of those games was rained out, and it was like, well, they have to make this game up because the Diamondbacks,
did on Monday.
It matters for the Diamondbacks. That might have even been like one of the last, I think that was the last homestand for the Yankees. The Diamondbacks had an 84 games. That's not a great regular season. I was watching, I forget what game it was. I think it was game 5 of the NLCS, and they were talking about how the Diamondbacks have built a team around their defense, and their defense is being, I'm like, this is the NLCS team, like, building around defense, like, fine,
run prevention
might be. This is what the Diamondbacks have done is fun for them, but that's not sustainable. You can't say we're going to go out and be the Diamondbacks. You can look at what the Rangers have done, certainly what the Astros have done over the past 7 years, because they have clearly built something that's sustainable. Even if you want to call one of their championships fraud, fine. 7 straight.
But even the Astros had the opportunity to completely reset, build through the draft, build through young players, and suck for years, so that they could, build the sustainable team.
Sure.
Oh, and by the way, if you have the ability to suck for a few years and like stockpile young talent that you're hitting on, again, to me, the number one attribute in any team to have, or the number one positive skill set to have is talent evaluation. If you can't evaluate talent and identify it so that you're seeing the type of player that's going to translate into major league talent, then you're screwed no matter what you do. I don't care how big your payroll is.
Do you think that's the
or anything
Yankees'
you do.
biggest problem? Brian Cash's
Yes, I think
biggest
it's a
problem is talent evaluation.
I think it's a significant problem, yes. And along with the talent evaluation goes the fit of that team, because you have to evaluate how a particular player is fitting within the roster construction. And to me, those are all correlated. But it starts, well before that. If you have the ability to do that, like let's just say the Diamondbacks had the ability to spend like the Yankees. Now, everybody's in big trouble because they have a nucleus and they can go out and also fill gaps with free agents. And that's kind of what
the weird
Astros
thing is
did.
They've tried to do that a couple times. Like when
they did it too early, though.
Greinke for a massive deal, and then they signed Bumgarner for a massive deal out of nowhere. Like they've done some weird things in recent history that leave you scratching your head. Like, what are the Diamondbacks doing?
Yes, and then I think that it's probably being a little early on some of the signings. And again, you got to hit on some of these players. Like that's very obvious, and that's not. You can have all the talent evaluation guys you want that are highly successful at doing it. It's still a relative crapshoot, but at least you're putting yourself in a better position to do something like that. When you look at the homegrown players, 12 on this roster, on this Diamondbacks team, that's really impressive. It is. And Corbin Carroll just looks like a guy that's going to be a stud for 10 plus years.
And maybe the Diamondbacks next year win 94 games, and all of these homegrown players and everything, this team just continues to blossom. And we look at the Diamondbacks 5 years from now and like, wow, they were on the cusp of something. That first year they made the World Series was actually just the beginning. Or next year they win 84 games again, and instead of having a hot run through the playoffs as the number 6 seed, they lose in the wild card round. Like that's also just as realistic.
It is also realistic, but at least they're putting themselves in a position, and they're not just saying, oh, it's a crapshoot. We're actually building a sustainable thing that we can tinker with and make ourselves better, not have to look around and then and completely, retool for a run because you realize your construction is off. They built it in a methodical way that made sense to sustain, and then to be able to add a player or two players to then, give themselves another bump if something doesn't work out. Like there are plans to look at how you can flex a roster into at least a competitive team to get yourself in it. And I don't totally disagree that it's a crapshoot. It is. You see the 6 seeds now are 2 years in a row. Is that it? That have gone this far in the playoffs? Like, yeah, the hot team.
No, it's not a crapshoot though, because like
to an extent it is. You got to get hot at the right time, no doubt. But that doesn't matter whether you still have to have a sustainable roster.
Yeah, just because there's a different World Series winner every year for the past 20 something years does not make it a crapshoot. Because like I just said, the Astros made 7 straight championship series. Okay, I don't expect a team to win every single year, but if you're in the Final Four consistently over a 7-year stretch, that to me says, no, it is not a crapshoot. The Astros are clearly good, and they clearly have a team that is capable of winning in October. Does it win every single October? No, because it's baseball and it's sports, and you can't possibly win every single time you take the field. But there's a difference. They're always there. Final Four, 7 straight years.
There's a difference in mentality. You're talking about getting to the playoffs because it's a crapshoot and that's all we have to do is get to the playoffs, or you're talking about building a sustainable team that's always in the playoffs and understanding that it's got to roll your way and the crapshoot of the tournament, but you're putting yourself in a very good position to be that team. It's a different mentality. Like there's still a crapshoot to the playoffs once you get in it, but how are you getting in it, and how are you building your team to sustain through it and put yourself in a better position? It's not, getting 2 hits a game and striking out 16 times. That's not the route. Like, yeah, you could get in the playoffs and then it's a crapshoot. And maybe you get lucky and hit the ball out of the park enough times in the right games. But these teams, I haven't looked at their analytics, and guys, if you can pull what this is, but like, I wouldn't be surprised if their strikeout numbers are lower and their on-base percentage is higher.
Well, I know the Astros every single year are near the top of the league for strikeout, or they strike out one of the least amount in the league consistently year in and year out. And
usually when you have a low strikeout percentage as a team, you're probably going to have a higher on-base percentage.
Here's where Logan tells us actually the Astros struck out more than anyone this year, or actually the Diamondbacks strike out a ton.
It's funny because I was looking at this right at the beginning of recording, because Jeff Passan was kind of beating his chest on Twitter about how like the Diamondbacks are a different brand of baseball and they're more fun. Astros third best strikeout percentage in baseball
every year.
Diamondbacks 4th best
Okay.
strikeout percentage in
What
baseball.
about Phillies and Rangers?
Um,
Rangers,
So
I bet.
Rangers
strike
are
out
probably a
decent
little
amount.
higher.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Rangers, I bet strike out.
So the Phillies struck out 20th in baseball at 23.9, actually exactly the same as the Yankees, and
Okay.
Texas 15th in baseball.
It does make sense
Um,
with the roster construction of those two teams. They do have a lot of power
But-
hitters.
But how many more runs did the Phillies score this year than the Yankees got?
Well,
like 150.
What about
more
on base
runs.
percentage? 'Cause
On
they're-
base percentage, Texas was third in baseball for the regular season, behind the Dodgers and the Braves. Houston was 5th. Arizona was 14th. And
The Diamondbacks are the outlier here, guys.
For
Like,
sure.
the
But
Diamondbacks.
They are, but they definitely play a different brand of baseball. They were 2nd in baseball in stolen bases.
Yeah,
Well,
They don't
and
strike out a lot.
Carroll had what 50 stolen bases by
Yeah.
himself. Like they have
Something like that.
they have a very their whole roster is chock full of athletic guys that can run around and catch the ball and
A great
steal
defensive
bases.
team also.
which also though, does usually play in October.
Absolutely
A
does.
team that doesn't make mistakes defensively or on the base paths and can keep runs down usually performs in October. You obviously still need to get hits with runners on base because ultimately playoff games usually come down to one or two situations where did you score in that situation or not? But a team that is not going to beat itself has usually a good track record in October. And the Yankees have consistently beat themselves one way or the other for the past 6 seasons.
The biggest problem, again, going back to what I just said about mentality and how you construct the roster. The Yankees are built for the regular season. They're built for getting some big numbers, but they are not built for the playoffs, especially the way that the playoffs are in today's world. They're just not. Yes, they hit the ball. You have to hit the ball out of the park. I understand that, you do. And again, the Diamondbacks are a bit of a buck against the trend, but you can't make it such a crapshoot when that ball goes out of the park. You can't put yourself in a position where it's, a bunch of solo shots. And that's what the Yankees do, because they're just never on base.
And the Rangers, I believe at the midseason point in the year, had the best record in the AL, right? Or they're right there with the Rays, and they struggled in the second half and got hot again at the right time. So you could look at that saying, well, they put themselves in a position to make the playoffs by having a great first half, and then they just got hot. So, oh crap, shoot, Rangers are lucky. Or it's just a team that was always built for the playoffs and went through a little bit of a struggle in the mid part of the season.
But just remember, though, that they needed to win the last game of the season to win the division. Didn't.
Yep.
Had to go on the road to Tampa to play the Wild.
Yep.
It definitely wasn't perfect.
No, it was not
I'm
perfect.
No, it wasn't.
But they also
perfect.
showed a lot of grit by both of these teams by going and losing Game 5, going down to the opposing team's ballpark and winning the last 2 games. Like that, I don't think that I saw, I forget what the stat was, but it hasn't happened in a very long time, or maybe it hasn't happened at all.
I think the stat you're talking about was the Astros have now lost 2 7-game series where they lost all home games and they were the home team. They did it in the 19 World Series, and they did it in this, and that was the first time that's ever happened in baseball history.
There was another one that I'm thinking of, a different one where both teams had to go to the opposing ballpark in Game 6 and 7 and win out.
And win out. Yeah.
And do that. But yeah, man, it's what baffles me, and I will say this: the Rangers are certainly the closest thing you can look to for the Yankees as far as the way that they've built their team, except for they've done it. They added more pieces, big name pieces.
Way more pieces
recently.
Than the Yankees have added.
Yeah, but recently, because the Yankees have added big names, but it's going back a few.
It's
and now
one
we're
a year.
looking at
It's
the
one
tail.
a year though. Like if you look at what the Rangers, go look at the Rangers roster in 2021.
Oh, that's the thing. They've stocked guys in 2 years that are going to be big contributors. When I see Andrew Heaney on the mound for a team in the playoffs, it baffles my brain. Like it's really hard for me to compute how a team that is rolling out that guy.
The Dodgers fixed him, right? Didn't the Dodgers fix him?
Well, before he even threw a pitch, we were watching the beginning of that game, and I was talking to Bevan, who was on the couch. We were talking. I was like, no joke. I've never seen a worse pitcher play at the major league level than Andrew Heaney pitch on the Yankees mound. I've literally never seen a worse pitcher than this guy throw. Like, he was that bad. I've never seen somebody more hittable than this guy. And then, sure as shit, he goes out there and gets shelled, gets one out, I think, in the
Was
game that he pitched.
The 2019 season the Yankees acquired Heaney, or was that more recently that they acquired him? More recently?
Dude, I don't remember what year it was.
2021.
Well, it wasn't 2020. It wasn't the COVID year.
It might have been 21.
I'm positive of that. Okay, so it was 21. They acquired Andrew Heaney, and then he was awful, like you said. And then I think the Dodgers signed him, and were like,
2021. He had a 7.32 ERA with the Yankees in 12 games.
And then
when the Dodgers signed him, he pitched in 16 games to a 3.10 ERA.
And as soon as the Dodgers signed him, though, I think we had this conversation. We're like, what do the Dodgers know? Because clearly they know something that we don't know.
That was what the Yankees were trying to do. Because he always had all the underlying strikeout numbers and stuff.
I mean, but when you're looking at talent evaluation,
unlocking it,
exactly talent evaluation, and then whatever the hell they're doing to tinker with guys, or I don't know what the hell happens when you walk into the Yankees clubhouse, because apparently there's kryptonite, built into the lockers, because these guys suck. They just suck. There's nothing that's remotely resembles the player that we think that we're getting when the
guy leaves, they immediately.
That's what I'm saying. They get their powers
better.
back. Yeah, they're drained. They're like, oh man, walking around weak. There's something in the clubhouse, and then they get.
Is there asbestos? Of the pinstripe.
Is there asbestos? Did someone, how someone buried like a Red Sox jersey in the concrete? Did someone put asbestos in there and not tell anybody? And just like, it's a.
They
problem?
dug that jersey up, right? That was an Ortiz jersey. Didn't they dig that up? I think they dug that up.
Yeah, but so I don't know. Again, talent evaluation, identifying the makeup of a player and how they can handle a situation. I don't know. It's one of these things that is very puzzling when you see the type of player coming in and then just not doing the thing.
I just think it's always, you got to be careful at looking at who's winning now and really asking yourself, is this sustainable or is this a little bit of a fluke? Because over the past 10 years, call it, so going back to the mid 2010s, and going down the teams that have won, some of them have been consistent and some of them there's definitely been flukes in there. Like the 2013 Boston Red Sox, that was a fluke. And then the 2014 Giants, they obviously weren't a fluke, but that was the last time they won. That was the end of their run. Then you had the 2015 was the Royals year, right? They had a 2 or 3 year run with that Royals team, and that's it, and that fizzled out. We thought that was going to be sustainable
because they, and this is something that very well might happen with the Diamondbacks. It happened with the Cubs. When you get a wave of young talent that's controllable, that actually performs above their, they're punching above their weight, and you're able to lock in a few free agents, it becomes difficult to re-sign all those guys. That's exactly what happened with the Royals. It's exactly what happened with the Cubs.
The Cubs is the surprising one. Because let's look at the Kansas City Royals in 2015 and that World Series team. Who went on after they left to have big careers? Like Lorenzo Cain, no. Eric Hosmer, he was good still with the Royals, and then once he signed with the Padres as a big deal. He wasn't good with them. Moustakas fizzled out. You had Wade Davis.
Moustakas was good, but Moustakas was a solid player, but he.
But again,
they were playing well together at that point. They were controllable. They didn't have a big market dollar amount. Obviously, they weren't able to bring in free agents. They built through the draft. They built through international signings, and they developed their talent. And they came up in a wave. And that wave, similar to what we're seeing with the Diamondbacks, they were able to play complementary baseball, and they built the back end of that bullpen to be a juggernaut. And it played well with how the team played. You got to know how the team is going to play. You got to feel the team. There's a heartbeat to the team that you have to understand as a GM and as the person who's in charge of the scouting department, and understand how these players are going to fit together. And God damn it, in 2017, it felt that way. It felt like they had that wave coming, complementary players going into 18, and then they changed leadership for some reason. They're like, no, this isn't going to work. We don't want to develop the young players with a guy that actually knows baseball. We're going to bring in some schmuck off the street that has good. He's the bro of these guys, and could be the cool dad, and stop the development, stop the accountability, stop all of the things that you need as a young player to be in position to play to your abilities. They screwed it up.
Yeah, the Cubs one, I think if we're looking at recent history, is the most surprising. We thought, I think, with Rizzo and Bryant and Dexter Fowler and some of those, the pitching that they had at that time, that would be a more sustained run, and that didn't happen. And it turns out the sustained run ended up happening by the Astros. So
they couldn't re-sign their guys. That was the biggest thing with them. They couldn't re-sign their guys.
The Cubs,
the Astros,
but the Cubs still had those guys for a couple more years, and they were never the same after that.
They were not the same. They were competitive, but they were not the same. You're right. But they also couldn't do it over a sustained time because they didn't re-sign the guys.
But the Cubs are capable of signing players. I mean, I understand the Royals probably not.
You're right.
Capable
there were choices
of re-signing, but like the Cubs are a big enough market team where if they want to have a $260 million payroll, they absolutely could.
Yes. Theo Epstein, though, looking at the track record and going back to even Boston, it's not what they do.
Yeah, Boston, it goes up. They zig and zag every 3 years. Boston zigs and zags. They go
after the teams that were competing with the Yankees in the early 2000s, after they had that strong nucleus of guys. Yeah, they brought guys up. They sold. They weren't re-signing guys. Like the first person that they've actually signed to a long-term deal was Devers, yeah.
Well, Devers, yeah, of that run, which was like the 2015 Red Sox, I think is when you started to see Bogarts. I think Bogarts' rookie year was 2015. So if you want to call it that era of Red Sox,
yeah,
Mookie Betts, yeah, that time, yeah, the Devers came up a year or two after that is when he's the one that they ended up signing. Yeah, I don't know. So it's interesting to look at the Final Four teams every single year. I still am under the opinion that largely the baseball playoffs are not a crapshoot because I see teams consistently winning. Do they win every year? No, but they're consistently there. And I think that's what the Yankees can be because they have the resources to do it and they have the resources to retain players in order to do it. Whereas if you're the Diamondbacks or if you're the Royals or some of these other teams we've been discussing, you might enter the lottery and you might get hot 1 or 2 years, but it's probably not going to be sustainable for you. And that's just the nature of the spending in the league.
You also have to have some hits. And then when you do get those hits, you have to make sure that you're keeping those. When I say hits, I mean on players. I mean literal hits, but also
you have to be hits on
talent.
players. And especially as a team like the Diamondbacks, you make one wrong move that's expensive that sinks your franchise. You make one big signing that could set you back a number of years. Whereas the Yankees,
and that's why they did it too early.
Yeah, the Yankees can make 5 bad signings, and it should not hinder their ability to go out and continue to spend.
But it does. Because it's a choice.
That's a self-restraint. That's not an actual restraint.
Correct. I mean, whether it's self-inflicted or it's a restraint, it's still one that we see and we're feeling because they're making that choice. And again, man, like go back. I really, when you look back at this, the Yankees and Cashman, we would be singing different. I really believe that we would be saying different things about Brian Cashman today if they kept a guy like Girardi or a guy like that in there to keep those young guys on the same path. And they deviated from the path that got them to that point, and they deviated at the leadership level. And frankly, whether they like him or not, development wise, it's very clear what that did to this team. It's very clear what that did to this team.
I wonder if Brian Cashman gave Hal an ultimatum. Basically, like, you give me full control over the baseball operations and the analytics and the decision making, or I'm not continuing as GM.
What a stupid ultimatum. If Hal even listens to the person that's underneath him talking about that, then that's soft. How can that possibly happen?
I don't know but like basically that's, I mean, I don't know if it was explicitly said in those words.
When do you believe that might have happened?
I think
his last signing?
No, I think it happened in the 2015-16 timeframe. When Ilya and I were doing that research for the Cashman episode, that seems to be when it changed with Brian Cashman, and it no longer was he was fighting ownership on decisions. Because if you go back even a few years before that, you could see Cashman going one way and then ownership constantly stepping in and making decisions that counteracted what Cashman was trying to do. If you, like the big signings of the 2013 winter with Ellsbury and McCann and Beltran, or the signing of who was that? It was Rafael Soriano, right, Ilya? That for whatever reason, Cashman was like against signing Rafael Soriano, and it wasn't even Hal that stepped in. It was it Levine or somebody else stepped in to like make that signing of Rafael Soriano. It was like very bizarre. And then I think after Cashman's contract was up at some point in the 14, 15, 16 timeframe, he basically was like, I'm only going to continue if you guys butt the hell out here.
Jacoby Ellsbury's been tweeting recently.
Oh yeah, he's got a Twitter.
On the
news to us.
X. Yeah, maybe it's now popping. He's been jawing back at some people too. But MLB teams are paralyzed by analytics. Great to see former MLB player as a GM with baseball knowledge and then use analytics. He's
Thanks,
also not
Els.
wrong. He's
Thanks,
also not
Els.
wrong. He's also not wrong.
Scott, do you have to run? Because I can continue with the guys on a couple other news items if you got to dip out.
I have a couple more minutes. Let's keep going.
Okay. Well, before we keep going, Game Time is our preferred ticketing app because it is the easiest way to buy tickets to whatever you want to go to. Sporting events, concerts, comedy shows, theater, and much more. The app has so many cool features and is very easy to use. Shows you trending tickets, what sections the best deals are in, and calls out cheap options and flash sales. So you can make an informed purchase. It's you get images of your seats before you buy. It's a fast buying process. You know I've told you guys this every single episode for like the past 3 months. I like the app just because it's clean and easy to use. I know where everything is. Sometimes you download a new app and you're lost. You're like, who designed this UI? The Game Time UI is very, very clean. Snag tickets today without stress using Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use code Bronx for $20 off your first purchase. All right, couple of off-season key dates to look for that we can touch on here. Still TBD, that post-mortem press conference. Do you think it's even going to happen, or is the Yankee strategy here let's just go radio silent and ignore things, and maybe people will forget that we have to speak?
No, they're deep in an audit, man. They're doing the work. They're grinding. They're in the trenches looking at everything.
Got it.
That another company's doing.
Got it. Well, they're auditing, the auditors, remember. The first day after the World Series ends, which obviously could be a range of dates, is when the free agents become officially free agents. They become eligible free agency. Severino, Montes, IKF, Wandy Peralta, Middleton, McAllister, and Weaver on the Yankees roster officially become free agents the day after the World Series ends. 5 days after the World Series ends, the Yankees have to make qualifying offers to impending free agents, and then those players have until November 15th to decide. So the qualifying offer is usually like a blend of the top salaries at that position that you can make, and then if the player accepts it, you get him for 1 year, and if he rejects it, depending on where that player ranks, you get like a compensation draft pick or something if he walks. I don't expect them to give a qualifying offer to any of those players. November 5th, Gold Glove winner is announced, and to maybe some people's surprise, I don't know, Anthony Volpe is a finalist. Anthony Rizzo is also a finalist, which love Rizzo, and I think he's an amazing defensive first baseman, but the fact that he was a finalist this year, I don't know, you can make your own judgments on how the Gold Glove is there, since he missed like half the season. But Anthony Volpe ranks near the top in almost every advanced fielding metric at shortstop. Outs above average, DRS, UZR, all these advanced defensive metrics. He did have more errors than a lot of other guys. So depending on who's voting for the Gold Glove, are they looking at fielding percentage and errors, or are they looking at some of these advanced metrics? We might see Volpe win the Gold Glove. If Volpe wins the Gold Glove, Scott, does that change your opinion on his rookie season at all?
No, I saw his rookie season with my eyes. I know what it was. I'll be happy for them if he won the Gold Glove, but I don't know. It kind of tells me a little bit about the position across the league, honestly, than him. He was better than advertised on the defensive side. I thought he showed a lot of good things on the defensive side. If he wins a Gold Glove, then cool. But no, it doesn't change what I think. I still think he had a good season with a lot of things to work on. There were clear deficiencies in his game that I believe that he can make changes upon. So, but it's good to see that we have a really good base for the defensive side of the ball.
You're right. A lot better than advertised on the defensive side. And I think we acknowledge that just throughout the season using the eyeball test. I would not have said, though, he ranked near the top of the league in all these advanced metrics. And I never at any point this season was like, we're watching a Gold Glove shortstop, even if you think the Gold Glove is crap. So
again, it also really depends on what the competition is. And so, a down year in the position on the AL is also something to look at. If you compare historically, some of the guys who have won the Gold Glove at shortstop.
The finalists are also Carlos Correa and Corey Seager, along with Volpe. So obviously, good company at shortstop. November 7th through the 9th, the GM meetings. November 14th, major and minor league reserve lists are due to protect players from the Rule 5 draft. November 15th, the Cy Young Award is announced, so we expect Garrett Cole to win that. November 17th is the non-tender deadline for arbitration players. The Yankees have 17 arbitration players. We went through this list a couple of episodes ago. Just to recap, I think the guarantees coming back on that list are Glaber, Clay Holmes, Nestor Cortez, Jose Trevino, Michael King, and Clark Schmidt. I think on the bubble guys are Loaizaga, Higgy, Jake Bowers, Albert Abreu, Jimmy Cordero. And I think not likely to return for one reason or the other, Lou Trevino, Franchi Cordero, Domingo Herman, Matt Bowman, Ryan Weber, and Billy McKinney. Do you disagree with any of those?
I think some of the guys coming back from injury, have potential re-signings with incentive-laden contracts, but for the most part, I think that's pretty solid.
And then the winter meetings are December 3rd through the 6th, and then January 12th, 2024 is the deadline to agree on contracts for arbitration players before you might have to go to an arbitration hearing or something like that. And then mid-February is spring training again, pitchers and catchers report. And then at some point we will maybe see some trades, maybe see some free agent signings, because I do know that the Yankees roster needs a big overhaul. And that sort of takes us into a survey that The Athletic did of over 5,789 Yankees fans that they polled on some key questions on the Yankees. And I want to run through a couple of these and get your thoughts. So they asked Yankees fans, what do you think is the Yankees major league team only biggest strength? What do you think they answered as number one?
Home runs.
Okay, so the options were pitching, defense, or hitting.
Pitching. I guess they would probably say pitching.
77% said pitching. What do you think is the Yankees' biggest weakness of hitting, pitching, or defense? What do you think they said?
Hitting.
94% in a landslide said hitting. What do you view as the Yankees' biggest need this offseason?
Hitting.
90% said hitting. What is the biggest concern about the organization right now? We've got roster construction, we've got player development, we've got analytics being misapplied, we've got payroll spending, and we've got player consistency.
Read the first two again.
We've got analytics being misapplied and roster construction.
Yeah.
Biggest
roster
problem,
roster
biggest
construction.
Concern. It was roster construction, 67%. Analytics being misapplied was second at 14%.
They're also one and the same.
And then we've got if Shohei Ohtani is unrealistic, which it shouldn't be, who should the Yankees' number one free agent target be? Yankees fans, 57% of them said Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Yoshi, the top Japanese pitcher. And to that I say, 3 questions ago, you just said offense and hitting is the biggest problem with this team. So why are we making our number one priority a starting pitcher? I don't understand that.
I thought for sure Bellinger would have been the answer.
He's number 2 at 25%, but a far distant second. And I think the problem here is that they're pitching
athletic readers.
The pitching market this year, we talked about this last episode. The pitching free agent market is very, very good. There's a lot of guys this offseason on the pitching market. Yamamoto, who we just mentioned. We've got Montgomery, who's back on the market. Blake Snell. Like, there's some pitching names here that are on the market. And then the offensive names, you've got Cody Bellinger. You've got Matt Chapman. Like, I don't know.
It's not a lot. That's kind of what we've been talking about.
So
if they're going to rebuild an offensive team, this is not the year to do it. It's just not. It's not a lot of great options.
Got to be through other means. You've got to make some trades, and I don't know. It's not easy to completely retool a roster position player wise by trading in the offseason, especially when your farm system is not stocked full of guys people are beating down your door to get, because Jason Dominguez is not being traded at this point. So we were kind of having this conversation in chat a couple days ago. You still got Oswald Peraza, who I guess has some value, but none of the guys in the Yankee system at this point, even the other guys we saw called up at the end of the year, Austin Wells, why am I drawing a blank on
Pereira
Pereira? These guys,
there's not significant value on the market across other leagues.
You're not going
to get something back.
None of them are centerpieces to a big trade.
Right.
They're supplemental pieces.
Right. Yeah, and again, if you're going out and looking for complementary role players and making that's where you're going to have to make some adjustments in this one. You're going to have to be creative. You're going to have to really look to find complementary players to do something, and that takes a lot of the nerds and the baseball guys talking and making sure that they're identifying a particular makeup of a player and trying to fill gaps. This goes back to my conversation that I had earlier in the year with Max Goodman, and was concerning to me because his thought, and just from being on the beat and hearing the street talk, that the Yankees were going to really rely on their young players next year. They're going to go in looking at their young players, and that's concerning because I don't believe they have the talent on the young side beyond Dominguez and Volpe that is going to make a damn of difference for this team. And like you just said, they don't have the pieces, and that goes to why they're not going to be helpful on the major league level. They don't even have the trade chips to go out and get guys, unless you're looking at guys who are complementary and fit a particular need, fit a particular skill set that can play well with this team as far as makeup. But who the hell is making those decisions? Who is doing that? Who is building that team? Who is going out and being creative outside of the bullpen for the New York Yankees? I don't know. I don't know who that person is that I have confidence for on the player, everyday player side.
But it's also complementary pieces are good when you need to fill one spot on the roster or one spot and a bench spot, not when you have 3 or 4 holes in the starting lineup. You can't fill 4/9 of the starting lineup with role players.
That's correct.
You're not going to be a good team. All right, quickly before we wrap up, I want to get your thoughts on the next 3 questions. So they asked on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, their confidence level in Aaron Boone. And answers were pretty much split about 10, 11, 12% between 1 and 5. But the biggest was 5 at 16%, which, okay, 5 confidence is like, what kind of confident, not confident at 16%. But the answers were pretty much spread across.
1 through 10?
Yeah, 1
confidence
through 10.
level? Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And very few people said 9 or 10, but like they are pretty distributed between 1 through 5 and even 6. Actually, 7, 15%. I just saw that. 15% say that 7 confidence in Aaron Boone. Then same question for Brian Cashman. 34% of people said 1. 18% said 2. 16% said 3. So according to the Yankees fans they polled, the much bigger problem here is Brian Cashman.
Yeah, the construction of it goes back to the construction of the roster question and what the biggest problem is. So it makes sense that one does make sense in what they in the consistency of this poll. That said, a new voice given the exact same team could certainly change things for the better in a few ways. Like they do need a new voice. It can't. Why can't it be both? Because it is. It's both. It's not just one.
The final one on same question on Hal Steinbrenner. 25% of people said they only have a 1 confident, 16% 2. Kind of pretty similar to Brian Cashman. So according to the Yankees fans they polled, the leadership at the very top, Hal, and just under Hal, Brian Cashman, who's controlling all of the baseball decisions, is the least confident, is what they have the least confidence in. and where they've seen this team deteriorate most, which is the roster construction over the past 3, 4, 5 seasons. And I think I agree with that. I also agree that while Aaron Boone is not a bigger problem than Brian Cashman, he's still a problem, but he's walking into a lame duck year, and I expect him to be here in 2024. And it's probably going to come down to, does the team make the playoffs? Then they'll re-sign him. Does the team not make the playoffs? Then they won't re-sign him. That's what it's going to come down to.
Yeah. They don't make decisions in a rational way sometimes. A lot of times, most of the times is what it seems like. So, and a lot of them are pre-made decisions that just kind of are played out. They just tend to play out, that are decisions that are made well before you need to actually look at and have some account. Again, it goes back to an accountability piece, because when you have pre-made decisions, you're not actually looking at what the person is doing. You're just looking at what your plan was, and then just going with that plan, and blindly going with that plan. And that's a goddamn problem.
And I don't know exactly how much Aaron Boone makes on a yearly basis. Is that information public? I think it's like $3-4 million bucks. So it's not like a ton of money. But also Hal might be looking at it like, well, I'm not going to pay Aaron Boone $4 million to go broadcast again in the ESPN booth and then also sign a new manager for another $3 or $4 million bucks.
If that's a concern, then we're screwed.
It could be a factor.
There's no way that's a factor. And if it is, we're screwed.
Okay, well.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to eat way more than that with Stanton's contract, so they should get used to eating.
It's a $3.45 million deal total of the contract?
Remaining
So he's like one of the lowest paid he's one of the lowest paid managers in baseball? At $1 million a year? Right? Like that's got to be one of the lowest paid managers in baseball.
I would say that's probably average, unless you have one of the veteran managers that get the extra.
Okay, maybe I'm just throwing. I don't know. I for some reason I thought his deal was like $3 million a year because he signed a new deal. I figured they would have given him like a pretty substantial raise.
Yeah, I think he definitely did get a raise. I don't know if that new deal is public knowledge because I'm not finding it, but I feel like I remember it being a slight raise, if any.
Okay. All right. Well, that's going to wrap up today's show. Next week, we are planning on starting our sort of GM episode series where we'll go through all the impending free agents, all the decisions that, trade options, what teams around the league might be doing, sort of setting the stage for our GM episode, which will happen following the World Series, where Scott and I each lay out what we would do if Brian Cashman were fired today. And Hal, we got a phone call from Hal and be like, hey, we need you. We need your assistance. We need to rebuild this roster.
In the past, real quick, we have gone at this approach as if, trying to be like a realistic, what would we do if we were Brian Cashman, knowing kind of how the history has been. I wonder if we just say, let's throw that out the window and do what, what we firmly believe that the Yankees should do, not what we believe they might do. And it's realistic. And let's just do this. Let's just reconstruct this team ourselves.
And I almost think we off the top just be like, we both want to sign Shohei Ohtani. Let's put that to the side and talk about all the other moves.
Yeah. But I think it's a good approach this year because, the decision-making is certainly questioned. And I don't feel like thinking like Brian Cashman and what the Yankees would do. It's not fun. And it's,
No.
it's not a good exercise. So let's buck the system a bit.
All right. We'll talk to you guys next week.